Hello, everyone, and welcome to LDM Radio Sports Talk, this show that talks about sports and other topics relatable to sports fans. Joining me this week in studio, Harris Berger.
Good to be back.
All right, this is a joyous occasion. So we're going to start off. Harris wants to talk about the NFL. There was a very, very busy week this week. What do you have for us?
Yeah, last week, shortly after our show, J.J. Watt requested his release from the Houston Texans. Was granted that release. The speculation was, where's J.J. going? Where's one of the best defensive ends of all time? Where's he going to go? Just signed the contract in Arizona this week. 2 years, $31 million with the Arizona Cardinals. Rejoins up with his teammate DeAndre Hopkins out there in a big organizational shift for the Cardinals, adding another defensive lineman to their already great defense with Chandler Jones on the other side of that line, Budda Baker, a great defensive addition for that team in a growing franchise with Kyler Murray's development. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins with coming off a career year. So that's a good addition for them. A lot of moving and shaking we're going to find over the next week. Starting this week, we've seen a lot of big-name players start to get the axe, getting cut left and right because of these salary cap issues. Big names to go down. Kyle Van Noy got cut from the Dolphins this week. After the first year of a $4-year, $9 million a year deal he signed with the Dolphins, was a surprise move there. Morstead got released by the Saints. Golden Tate was released by the Giants today. Kyle Rudolph was released by the Minnesota Vikings. So you see some of these big name players that have big contracts start to get the axe this week, and apparently it's going to continue on through next week, and it's going to get worse. So we'll be on the lookout with a full report next week of who gets the axe from their team. Basically, everyone's on the block. Those big name players, some of your favorite players from your favorite teams that you might have a jersey of, you might be a fan of, right? If they didn't have a good year last year, they had a down year, they might not be on the team next year because of those salary cap issues. COVID has run rampant through this league, and the owners don't have as much leeway anymore with the salary cap not going up. So there's a lot of teams that are in salary cap trouble. The Steelers just restructured Ben Roethlisberger's deal, so they saved $5 million in cap space. You'll see a lot of guys start to restructure their contracts if they want to stay. Otherwise, if the guys want big money, they're going to find new teams that are willing to pay them. Indianapolis is a team that has a lot of cap space. My Patriots got a big cap space, so look for them to make some moves in the offseason.
How about the good guys in green?
Nope.
New York?
They do have some cap space.
They're like fourth.
They do. I'm mistaken.
Jeez.
But what are the Jets going to do?
They could very well blow it, but they got the money.
No,
they
very likely to blow it, right? This is the same thing. Kyle Van Noy this is one of the things, right? We talked about in past shows. Some teams just do what the teams do, right? The Dolphins dolphined, and they basically they let Kyle Van Noy walk out at the door. He's likely, I'm going to say, I would love to see him come back to New England. Come on home, Kyle. We'd love to have you. He basically gets pennies on the dollar because he's got $4 million. He's guaranteed money from the Dolphins. They saved $9 million in cap space for a guy that was the captain of their defense last year. Made big plays for them, and they were a top 5 defense last year, and then you just let them go for nothing. What are the Dolphins doing? Are they trying to create more cap space to bring in a guy like Deshaun Watson, to bring in a guy like Russell Wilson? Who knows? Russell Wilson's on the trading block, it seems, and he's not happy with his situation in Seattle. Seattle's been picking up the phone and asking teams. Teams have been calling Seattle to find out what it would take. So we'll see what happens there. We all know what Deshaun Watson's situation is in Houston. He wants out, but it's going to take a lot of draft capital and a lot of money and maybe some player personnel to make those moves. So
imagine that they try to get the number 1 picks back from Washington not
from the Dolphins.
From the Texans.
The Dolphins realistically have the best. The Dolphins have 4 or 5 picks in the top 40 of the draft this year. So they definitely have the capital to make the moves that they need to make. But to get rid of a guy like Kyle Van Noy on your defense, who's been so good for that defense, and he's a Super Bowl champion, brings leadership to the locker room, and demonstrated it time and time again over the course of this year, has really been is a real eye opener of why teams make those moves. And then it kind of gives fans the other side of the coin, where they kind of see guys like Deshaun Watson, who might not like, hey, honor your contract, bud. You signed up for a $500 million contract, play it out. But you see that the NFL is a business, and you got to get your money, and you got to protect your family. And if they're going to go after your money and basically take your job away for no reason other than for them to save some money, then you got to look at it that way too. So I think we'll see kind of what happens with the NFL over the next week or so. But it's definitely this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cuts.
I think the NFL has always had just the weirdest situations with contracts because you have these guys signing 5 to 7 year deals, and literally nobody gets to that 5th and 7th year. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Lifers,
a lot
right?
of times, even these contracts, like even when they're doing really really well, it gets to the point where they just become a salary crunch and they just end up cutting them. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, I don't know. I don't have any of the proof or stats in front of me, but it just seems like every single between 5 to 7 year deal never goes to the final year. Like, there's always a cut somewhere. There's always, because it could be injuries, right, and it could be, poor performance, or it could either just be, great performance, but there's just no money. There's not enough money to go around. You have to save some money. So the NFL is zero loyalty out of any sport.
I think it's all leagues have no royalty.
No, but I mean the NFL is just the absolute worst when it comes to it.
It's terrible
because like every other sport has the guaranteed contract. So like, let's say
NFL's got guaranteed contracts.
They have guaranteed money, but they don't guarantee the full life of the contract though. They don't have
no league has.
They do.
Life, no.
Yeah, because all right. So when the Yankees,
time.
That's what I'm saying. But when the Yankees, when they had Alex Rodriguez, they wanted him to go a year earlier than his contract ended, but they still ended up paying him that money. They were just like, all right, don't show up, just stay home. But that that was guaranteed money. If it was the NFL, they would have just cut him that last year and they would have saved all that money back. No,
NFL contracts you got to pay guarantees.
Nah.
Yeah, Carson Wentz is getting paid by the Eagles.
All right, so if it's like a 5 year, $100 million, but 25 million is guaranteed.
Right.
So only the 25 million is guaranteed, but then the rest of
baseball's the only sport where the contract is fully guaranteed.
Right.
That's the only league that does that.
No, they're all.
No.
The NFL is the only one where you can cut them.
Hockey's the same thing. Where if you have a contract for 7 years, something $1 million, $42 million, but only $20 million is guaranteed, they only have to pay you $20 million and they can cut you. That's right. So baseball is the only sport where the contract length and money is fully guaranteed, regardless of what you signed for.
No, the NFL is the only one that's like that.
No.
All right, we're gonna have to do some research. We're gonna have to come back next week with the concrete findings, because we don't have enough time to go on Google right now. But so that'll be a good topic for next week. But let's move on a little bit. So there's one topic that has to deal with all sports, which is a rather subjective one through and through, which is officiating. So we have in the MLB, we have umpires, and the every other league pretty much has just referees. So which sport has the worst officiating?
Well, I know where you're going, so I'll go a different route, and then because we're both going to agree here.
There's a lot of ways to slice this pie.
Yeah, I'm going to go just for the sake of conversation here for the show. I'm going to say football. It's been well documented over the last 5 years. The dumpster fire that is NFL officiating even goes far beyond that, where we had the Hail Mary gate, where we had the Hail Mary touchback with Green Bay and Seattle. Shout out to my memory for remembering that one. And then we got the Nickel Roby Coleman phantom pass interference with the Saints. Saints seem to be on the receiving end of a lot of these bad calls. You have the Kyle Rudolph not push off in the NFC Championship a couple years ago.
Well, I'm gonna step in and say that I think that Des Bryant catch against the Packers was an actual catch.
That's another one, right?
But it wasn't at that time.
We have the pass interference was reviewable, but it really wasn't reviewable last year, right? Then they got rid of the rule, and then pass interference was rampant again this year. We had it in the NFC Championship again, and then we had the pull of the jersey with Tampa this year. So NFL officiating has been a real dumpster fire, holding on every single play, whether they decide to call it or not. Depends on the week and what the league wants. If they want them to increase holding calls by 10%, you see more flags, right? And the game slows down. Or if they don't want it, then you don't see it. So it's really, everyone knows it's Roger Goodell's world and we're all living in it. So it depends on what he wants to see. And if he wants to see more holding calls, more pass interference calls, then that's what's going to happen. But it makes the game slow down. The refs seem to make it all about them. There's reasons why we know names like Ed Hockley. There's reasons why we know Booger. We know all these guys that they have their names out there, right? And NFL referees and referees in general should be the most quiet people. You shouldn't even be able to recognize them on the street. They should be the faceless operation of the league, of any sport. And football, unfortunately, has really suffered because of it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree that when you know what the officials' names are, that's usually when they're in trouble. There's just no other reason for it. Can we actually say that the worst blown football call is that non-tuck rule from the Patriots and the Raiders way back in?
I completely disagree. Because
I'm sure you would.
No, because the Saints
would not a shock there.
No, the Saints would have been in the Super Bowl against the Patriots 2 years ago if the pass interference call was with the ref from me to our producer Charles over there sitting. That was how close the referee was to that call and missed it.
Yeah.
All right. The tuck rule was at least in the snow. Who knows? That was the rule that was on the books. The refs followed the rule.
Okay.
The pass interference call was the pass interference call. The tuck rule was changed shortly after that. But pass interference, something's bad when a rule changes shortly after.
Yeah.
Right? So the tuck rule, same thing. The refs followed the rules. Not a great call. I'm going to say that because I'm a Pats fan and I'll perfectly accept it. We won a Super Bowl. Adam Vinatieri got another ring for us. That's what happens. But then we go to the Saints-Rams NFC Championship game, that phantom pass interference call. Then what happens the next year? Now pass interference becomes challengeable, right? So when you see those things happen, that's when you know that a ref messed up. So you know that's when things need to change, but then they got away from it this year. You know who really did it right with that pass interference review was the XFL. As short-lived as they were, they had the Xbox controller up there in the booth, and he got to reverse and see, and you got to watch him review it, right? And you got to hear it and listen. They did it right with the XFL, and the NFL needs to take a look at that and say, hey, Mr. Al Riveron, I know you're watching. Probably not. This is a small show. We'll get there eventually. But, hey, look, that's what they need to get to, right? We need to get to the point where we need, as fans, need to be able to understand what refs call because we know the game's fast, right? That's the one thing. And especially this year, we had the jersey pull in the NFC Championship game that nobody thought was pass interference or holding until you really saw the jersey getting pulled 10 feet behind the guy. Then you realize, all right, the ref kind of got it right. But when you're not calling anything all game, then it's the inconsistency, too. That's the problem. So that's where the NFL really needs to figure it out. And we do have some good officials in the NFL. Obviously, the Super Bowl was pretty good, but that's the best of the best every year. So there's 16 games every week or so. You don't have 16 crews that are that good. That needs to change.
Yeah. All right. So the sport that I think is the worst, which ultimately a lot of people would agree with, is Major League Baseball.
Yep. I agree.
The officiating there, first off,
who's the worst one? Because there's one name.
Angel Garcia?
Angel Jimenez.
Angel Jimenez, right? So
it's not even worth.
Yeah. So it's just
Hernandez, I think, is that.
Yeah. Angel Hernandez. There you go. So one thing I'll say is there's this. It's very subjective with the strike calls, whether it's balls or strikes and things like that. There's supposed to be a letter of the law where it's supposed to be the size of the plate and then it's just from the chest to the knees. And unfortunately, every umpire who calls the games, they have different strike zones for whatever they want, basically. And it's just, they get exposed when they have the TV telecast on Fox, which is mostly the one that has the strike zones on it. So it shows them basically every error that they have, which is at least 20 a game. Out of whatever 100, 200 pitches that are in a game. And then there's the actual shows that they put on when there's some kind of disagreements. I mean, it's just there's so many umpires out there that they just basically make it people are they paid a ticket to watch them officiate. Mm-hmm. They just go and they make these shows and they throw out people. Baseball, like every sport, is an emotional game. So that's it really should have to be something drastic to kick somebody out, actual punches being thrown or something. It shouldn't really be, just words being exchanged.
You can't even
or,
argue. You
or
can't
if you
even
have like a
argue
dirty
with an
look.
umpire without getting thrown
Yeah,
out
you
anymore.
get like dirty looks and then they throw them out. Like basically, it's like whatever the mood the umpire's in. But like, not a single person buys a ticket to see the umpires do their job. Like it doesn't. Like they should just be in the background, doing what they have to do. But unfortunately, like this
I'll
just
tell you
time
what,
and time again.
I love a good argument though.
The-
When they get in each other's faces, spitting
Yeah.
on each other. I mean, not COVID anymore. We can't do that, but
Yeah.
you get it, right? Kicking dirt on each other, kicking dirt on the plate. Some of the best tantrums. Those are the best YouTube videos to go and watch. You can go down a big old rabbit hole and you see arguments between managers and umpires or players and umpires. One guy dragged a trash can and put it on home plate.
Yeah.
Just say that was better than what the ump was calling. I mean, you're 100% right though. I mean, you look at the guys like Angel Jimenez, the Jim Joyces of the world, right? Again, why do we know their names?
Yeah.
We shouldn't know their names. We shouldn't be able to. They're not household names, right? Players are household names. Managers should be household names, and they are. But the fact that officiating, umpires in this case, is a household name is a problem. And Angel Jimenez, I mean, it was just put on display just yesterday, I think, in a spring training game where the pitch was pretty much right down Broadway, and he called it a ball. And what does the announcer say? Oh, look, Angel Jimenez is in midseason form. I mean, what are we doing here? They're going to find very quickly they're going to get replaced by a computer very fast. The debate has been for years now, and as technology continues to advance, it's only going to make it harder for umpires. You look at Jim Joyce, took a perfect game away from a guy a couple years ago. Remember Galarraga from Detroit?
Yep.
Took that blatant. Now we have video. See, same thing. Rules change because people mess up. When an umpire messes up, rules change. As soon as that happened, the next year we started getting coaches challenges in baseball. Same thing. So now we get home run challenges, bases challenges. Sooner or later, I mean, baseball wants to be a faster game. You can't have balls and strike challenges. It just can't happen. But that's how balls and strikes are going to be called by a computer eventually, because that's just the only way we're going to be able to figure it out in order to get it right.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, and it's just mind-boggling how these things are allowed to happen, and it's just been going on for so long. So now with the technology, they're being exposed more, so there are more changes that are coming. But I'm huge on being a traditionalist when it comes to a lot of things. But there is just a proper notion where you could just call balls and strikes, from a booth, or just ball strike, call it on the big screen, whatever. You don't even really need somebody to have back there. It's just one of those things. It's just like it would make the game more fair for everything. There's always like the human error factor, but the human error factor just gets out of control sometimes. It's unfair when it costs people like games and seasons and millions of dollars in rewards and things like that when it gets to that point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at now. Let's say this first. There are good refs. There are good umpires. There are good people at calling balls and strikes. Obviously, not everyone's perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But there's some that are egregious, right? Angel Jimenez is one of them. Or Angel Jimenez, whatever his name is. It's not even worth mentioning.
Nah.
And Jim Joyce is going to make a bad call at first base when it should have been an out, and it's safe, and it should have been a perfect game, and it wasn't. But when you're talking about one of the things when you gamble, one of the things I look at when I gamble is who's the ref, and who's the head referee, who's the head umpire when I bet baseball, things like that, because things change when that happens. In the NFL, when certain refs are the head refs, there's more holding calls in that game. There's more turnovers in that game because of that, right? Because you're trying to throw deep balls. There's more pass interference calls, which means more points. Things change, right? So that's the stuff that can't happen. We can't have, because depending on the crew is how the game's played. The game should be dependent on the two teams, and the ref shouldn't have any influence other than calling the game based on the rule book. And what we're finding is, especially, I think baseball, I think we hit both. Baseball and football, I think, are the two worst. The NBA is probably not too far behind, but the NBA has a flopping problem. I don't think they have a referee problem at this point.
Yeah.
And we can get into that in another show. But we have that problem where some of these teams and some of these are losing games. They're losing games because of reffing, and that's the problem that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of sports. It's just which ones are more glaring than the others. And if you look at it, the sports that haven't been mentioned, the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL, like, you know, they have their certain side issues, and they have like blown calls and things like that. But when you talk about like really, really glaring errors that really just mess everything up, those the two sports that we mentioned, football and baseball, are the absolute worst.
I'll tell you what, I think hockey is probably the one sport that's getting the closest to making it perfect. They have so much video review and off ice officiating that can talk to the refs that are on the ice. And obviously, a 4-man crew in 155 by 55 ice sheet
Yeah.
is enough, right?
Yeah.
And we don't.
And
have
they also
guys
have
behind net.
they have the guys in Toronto for
Right.
when there's a call, like let's say like if there's a debatable goal, like they'll stop play with a horn and then just have the replay right there, which is also good.
Right.
That's
So
something that baseball would never do.
I think they're getting closer to that. I think the NHL is adapting to the needs of the players and how fast the games, because the games are faster. Every sport is
Yeah.
faster than what they were 10, 15 years ago. And officiating needs to keep up with that, and they haven't been able to in some sports, and some sports are moving faster to keep up than others are.
All right, so we're gonna move on to our next topic. So we're gonna credit Instagram account Starting Nine with this question that they asked all their fans, and we're going to talk about it on the show. It says, "Does one world championship make a long-term, big money contract a success?"
So this is the basis of this question was Fernando Tatis Jr. signed a 10-year, $340 million contract with San Diego. Shortly after our last show, actually, this contract and was dropped on us out in San Diego. I mean, this guy's a stud, so he deserves every bit of that contract. But the price tag for good baseball players is only going up, which is crazy to see how much money some of these guys are making. To go back to the question, is one, when the guy gets paid that much money, is one enough? Ask the Red Sox. The Red Sox are a big idea when it comes to that, right? Mookie Betts won an MVP and a World Series, and they wouldn't pay him. But it's funny, and I hate that they did that. But you look at it that way, right? But then you look at the Angels with Mike Trout. Mike Trout has won nothing, right? The Angels haven't been good, really, while Mike Trout's been there. Mike Trout's the best player in baseball. There's no doubt about that. But the big contract, if you have a big contract on a team where the owner might not want to spend that much else, there's not a lot around Mike Trout, right? You have Shohei Ohtani, you have a couple of decent pitchers, but they don't have a team. I think the biggest example, again, is look at Francisco Lindor. Francisco Lindor was the face of Cleveland. They went to a World Series, didn't win. Now where is he? He's in New York. And he's going to get a massive contract from the Mets because Stevie wants to pay him, right? Steve Cohen wants to pay him to stay because he is a big face in baseball. I think it's going to take, if you start creeping up into the 30+ million a year category, and it's a long-term deal, you got to look at 2, 3, maybe. I don't think 1 is enough. I think owners would say that. I think the Red Sox model is that, right? Mookie Betts came in. That team that won that World Series in 2018 is gone. Jackie Bradley Jr. signed with the Brewers today, so that whole outfield, the Killer Bees outfield, Betts, Bradley Jr., and Benintendi, all 3 of them are gone. David Ortiz gone. Dustin Pedroia retired. Hanley Ramirez gone. That team is dismantled. And owners, when you win a championship, it brings in so much money. Then after that, they might say, all right, I don't really want to be over the luxury tax for the next 10 years. Let's start to dump some of these guys off. So if you're talking from an ownership perspective, yeah, 1 might be enough. But if you're talking about a fan perspective and you see, hey, this guy's making that much money and we're not winning, then you start to question, hey, what's going on with this guy? Why is he getting paid that much money and we can't win? So I think that's kind of how I feel about it. Yeah, 2. I think 2, at least 2, I think is what's going to make some of those 30 million plus contracts worth it. Unless you're a pitcher, because you can't control all of it, right? Jacob deGrom makes almost 40 million a year, or pretty close, I think. Or no, he might be close to 30, maybe a little over. But he's pitching once every 7 days, right? And pitches twice a series in the playoffs if he's lucky. So then that's tougher. But the big bats, Trout, Tatis Jr., Machado, Aaron Judge, those big contracts. Giancarlo Stanton has yet to live up to his contract in New York, so I'll talk about that contract all day long because that's the worst contract in baseball. The guy doesn't play 50. The guy plays 60 games a year and can't hit the ball.
Yeah.
He's getting paid $36 million a year. He can't hit. So, but I think, yeah, two's probably the number.
No, I'm gonna say it depends on the situation and what teams they're coming from. If they're playing for the New York Yankees, then you're expected to have more than two. And now with the Red Sox, post 2004, now you want to have more championships. But if you look at it like the Chicago Cubs, where they didn't win in forever and they got that one, I think that was more precious than anything else. So that was worth it. I think it depends on how deprived the actual team is in winning that title before. So like now we have the San Diego Padres, who I don't think they've won anything ever, or if they have, it's been like forever. But I don't think they have even one in there. So like right now they are going in and they are trying to not only be the best, like obviously they're trying to be the best team in the MLB, but they have the Dodgers in the division, who's currently the best team in the MLB. So now not only do they have to fight off every other team, but they have to fight off the best team in the actual division. So they're going to see them more times than anybody else. So like they're basically just trying to make this super team to get through everybody to have that first championship, and they try to make that a success. And I think one is enough if it's if it's a team that hasn't won ever, then you win that one and you're golden. Like the next person who takes the New York Jets and they win the Super Bowl with them, it's going to be worth it no matter what. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you give the guy $200 million for 20 years, as long as he's able to, like win a championship, won, then we're good. Even have to get him to the Super Bowl. We don't even have to win. Just get him to the Super Bowl, and then that'll be enough. So,
but that's the thing. So then you're saying, based off that argument, right? If the Padres win the division and make the World Series, they don't even have to win it, and make the World Series, that's enough?
Well, if that's
for $340 million, that's enough?
For that 1 year, yeah. I mean, like, if that's the highest it ever gets throughout the extent of the contract, then yeah, that would suck. But it's good progress, and progress is important. But like let's say like if in the San Diego Padres situation, if they get that one championship, I think it would be enough, because they've never won before. It depends on where the fan base is coming from. But if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers, then this argument, no,
So that's the other side of the coin, right? So because the Padres have the Dodgers in their division, who money is of no disposal when it comes to the Dodgers, they're willing to spend and spend and spend, and that was case in point with Mookie Betts. They went out and got Trevor Bauer this offseason. So you see what they're willing to spend to win championships, and it works, right? And that's the one thing about baseball. Without a salary cap, teams can do this. And the Padres are going in, but the Padres, having not won, do they want to keep a guy like Fernando Tatis Jr. because he is a growing face of baseball, or because they think he's the meal ticket to win a World Series?
I think
it's both.
So
I'll say that first, because I think they're paying guys. I mean, you look at Mike Trout in L.A. Mike Trout wouldn't be Mike Trout if he didn't play in L.A. Mike Trout, the baseball player, would be, but the name Mike Trout is because he plays in Los Angeles. All right? And Los Angeles fans will get mad because he plays in Anaheim technically. But it's Los Angeles, right? And it's interesting because San Diego's a big city, but it's not a big market technically when it comes to baseball. Ownership in San Diego is trying to change that. But when I think getting guys like Tatis Jr., I think getting guys like Eric Hosmer after the Royals won the World Series a few years ago, they signed him. Getting Machado out there, I think they're building that base to compete with LA for a bigger market, right? They're trying to take that market share away. And I think that the difference is you come over to our side of the woods, and it's the Aaron Judges, the Garrett Coles, the guys that are getting paid, the Stanton's getting paid $30 million, and the Yankees haven't won nothing.
Yeah.
So
just to stay on the Yankee subject, since you brought it up, is there was the one situation where they signed 3 free agents in the offseason before 2009. They got Mark Teixeira, who was the first baseman, and then 2 pitchers, CC Sabathia and AJ Burnett. Now they ended up eventually winning the world title in their first year, and then that was it.
Right.
So were those contracts worth it because they did get the one? I think so. Especially in the case of AJ Burnett, which is in a lot of a lot of the Yankee circles, like he underachieved for the extent of the contract. But if you look at that 1 year, he was one of 3 pitchers that they rode, 3 starting pitchers, which is almost unheard of now to ride just 3 starting pitchers all the way to winning the World Series. But they did it, and AJ Burnett was one of those pitchers. So it was absolutely worth it for them to have him on the roster, and it made his Yankee tenure great, as even though like it wasn't great for the whole extent of the whole term of the contract, but the fact that he was able to get that one world championship in there made him a better Yankee than most of the other ones that didn't end up making it, like Mike Mussina, Jason Giambi, those people like that. They weren't able to finish off and get a world title, but AJ Burnett was.
So now, fast forward 12 years later, without a Yankee title, and you have guys like Aaron Judge, you have a $300 million pitcher in Garrett Cole, you have a $100 and whatever million pitcher in Aroldis Chapman, you have another big bat, $300 million bat in Giancarlo Stanton, and all of them have been absent come playoff time. Garrett Cole got rocked this offseason.
Nah, but
Chapman's has more blown saves in the playoffs than anyone I've ever seen, and Giancarlo Stanton's lucky to even start a game in the playoffs.
No,
if he's not hurt.
He had like 6 homers last October. He was the man. Out of everybody that you mentioned, yeah, you got
okay,
it.
But are we talking
Stanton
about?
was the man though.
But are we
he
talking
was awful
about
in
the
the
New
regular
York?
season.
Are we talking about the New York Yankees? Yeah, we had a good playoff run. Or are we talking about the New York Yankees? We win championships.
Well,
that's what the Yankees have become. It's like, oh yeah, we had a pretty good year. It used to be the Yankees win or we don't or we riot. That used to be Yankee fans.
Yeah.
Yankee fans have gotten soft, and I'm sorry. I'll say it as a Red Sox fan. I'll make that poke every single day of the week. The Yankees' legacy has gone away. The heir apparent of the Yankees, the aura of that this is New York and this is the house that Ruth built. That ain't the house that Ruth built no more.
Yeah.
The Yankees are content getting to the ALCS now and making the playoffs now. They're not content. That used to not be the case.
Well,
they used to be big bad Yankees. They used to be the Bronx Bombers and used to run havoc over everyone. That's not the way it is anymore. They'll pay guys every now and again. But remember a couple years ago, Bryce Harper and Manny Machado were both free agents, and everybody in New York thought they were both coming here, and the Yankees were going to pay them $300 million apiece. And they ended up getting Giancarlo Stanton from the Marlins because Derek Jeter owns the team now. So they were able to sneak that contract in and sneak that trade in for nothing. And then get him from the Marlins. He's barely played because he's been hurt. Aaron Judge has been a homegrown guy, luckily, for the Yankees. But he's going to get paid. They bring in Chapman, who they ended up getting rid of. They ended up actually trading him to the Cubs the 1 year when the Cubs won it. Getting the good return in, I think Gleyber Torres came over in that trade. Or was it Andujar? One of the 2 guys came over in that trade. And then Dellin Betances, who's no longer with the team. But I'll tell you what, you start closing your eyes a little harder, and the New York Mets are going to become the team in New York because that team that they're building over there in Queens is a pretty good one with Jacob deGrom leading the way, with Francisco Lindor, and that young infield with Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, and Francisco Lindor over there. That's going to be a good team. And the Yankees haven't been able to figure it out. The AL is very good. We know that. It's very competitive. The division, the AL East, is the most competitive division in baseball, I'd argue. And now the Rays are going to be good again. The Red Sox are putting a team back together, hopefully. And Toronto, with George Springer and the additions they made, are going to be good. So, I mean, Baltimore's still Baltimore. They're going to continue to be that. But you look at the big contracts that New York has, and I think you're starting to creep into that. Yeah, if they get one, that's worth the $300 million for Stanton and the $300 million for Cole, and then let them go and do whatever they want to do. But when you're talking about some of the arguments for how many they need, those big names and those big contracts, especially in a city like New York, you need 2, at least.
Yeah, I'd say from the Garrett Cole Stanton perspective, but you went way out there. Yeah, you were.
I needed to get that off my chest.
I don't know if you could see like on the camera, but your eyes were just getting super red. It was just awful. It was like, oh boy. So I mean, the amount of hatred there.
Just needed to get off my chest.
The temperature is rude. I don't know. We turn the AC on or something. I don't know. Getting crazy over here. But I don't even know where to start. All right, so the Yankees are not soft. What happened was when George Steinbrenner, the old the father of their two owners right now, or actually one owner that is still around, he ran things a lot differently, and it was the way that pretty much the Dodgers are running business now, where they're just buying everybody, regardless of the price tag. They just went out and got them, and they didn't care about the luxury tax and things like that. We've learned that that's not the best way to go about it, because even if you get like the most top line guys, it doesn't automatically lead to a title, and that's why there's been like billions and billions of money that's been spent and then not getting enough championships in return. When they had the '96 run, and then when they had the eventual going to 2001, where they went to where they went to 5 World Series in 6 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When they did that, they did it on homegrown talent, and they did it on, basically the way they're doing it now. So right now, they are in a younger stage of development. So like now, basically, is the show me years when it comes to Gary Sanchez and Aaron Judge and things like that.
Gary Sanchez.
Huh?
I didn't even get into Gary Sanchez.
Gary Sanchez.
I'll save that for the
I
beginning
love
of
me
baseball.
some Gary Sanchez.
I'll
Yeah,
save
we
that for the
definitely we
beginning
need a whole
for our
show
baseball preview.
talk about Gary Sanchez. But that they're now is like the show me years for a lot of their development. So like any young team, any young player in any sport, I always say it takes like about 3 years for the development to see really where they are and what they're going to become in the future. A lot of their success was right out the gate, which is awesome. But at the same time, like hitting in October has been a problem for many teams, and the Yankees are one of them.
Yep.
The hitting in October has been the problem since.
The only team it didn't seem to be a problem for was Houston, but we all know why.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. But even at that, I mean, even this past October, they're 3 and 4 hitters, Altuve and Correa. They were able to hit more, even with the whole scandals and behind them, because obviously they couldn't get away with it this year.
Right.
I mean, there was no fans, so they couldn't possibly try to do that bang thing on it, So, but all in all, the Yankees, their expectation level is different, but the ultimate goal is still the same. It's just how to get there. They're looking for a different mathematical equation than the way they've done it in past years.
Sure, and that's ultimately the bottom line of what I was trying to say was the mystique and the expectations of Yankee fans and the Yankees organization has drastically shifted since the early 2000s. It seems like since 2009, it's become less and less I lost my train of thought. Basically, the way the Yankees organization works now, it used to be World Series or bust every year. Yeah. And now it has, this is a developmental year. The Yankees never had developmental years when I was a kid. We never watched that happen.
That's true.
But
if you weren't around for, what was it, between 77 and pretty much all through the 80s, going into the early 90s.
No, you're much older than me.
There was some dark days in there. Yeah, but
I
followed the teams.
Listen, I grew up a Red Sox fan. I know about dark days, all right?
There was some dark days in there. So it's just, it's a little like there was a bit of a transitional period.
But you're talking about 40-something years ago, right?
But
but now are you starting to get back? That's what I'm saying. The Yankee mystique, right? This aura that the Yankees have, that they are the team in baseball, right? Where we win championships. That's what everyone says, right? Whenever I go to Yankees games, it's 27 rings. That's gone.
It's still there. What are you talking about?
You don't get to say that when you haven't won nothing in 12 years. And you haven't even sniffed a World Series title in 12 years. You can't say that anymore.
Listen, but
Those
when
go
you
out the window.
But when you
paying guys $300 million a pop and they're not doing anything. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is that used to be the way you do it. Because you went to World Series every year and you made deep playoff runs. There was a long stretch of time where the Yankees didn't even make the playoffs. Yeah. And then it was, all right, now let's just get back to the dance, right? Let's just get there, right? That was never the case when we were kids. That never happened. And now we're back to that point, and the Yankees are still finding ways to pay guys like Giancarlo Stanton, who when he's healthy, yes, in last October he was hitting baseballs. But when that's only when he's healthy, and he seems to be very unhealthy the majority of the season, especially in a 162-game schedule like they're going to have this year. Yeah. Last year he got lucky with a 60-game season. He didn't have to play as much. But when you have 162 games, $300 million is a lot of money for a guy that only dresses for 70 of them.
Yeah, well, I think that was when you say that we got him for nothing. I think that was a part of the deal
Jeter
because we
giving
had
back
to we
the
had to
Yankees.
take on all of that money in that term and contract. So it wasn't like Derek Jeter did us a favor. It was basically a hand to hand because he
Yeah, but the
didn't
Yankees
he didn't
didn't
want
have any.
that salary on his payroll. He wanted the financial flexibility, so he gave it to us with not that much in return. But the actual penalty of the deal is accepting the whole contract, accepting the terms of the
Is
contract.
a $300 million, he was an MVP at the time, NL MVP, 50 home run a year guy for Starling Castro and a couple of prospects.
But they had to know that
the Yankees don't care about paying people. We've established that.
He had the fringe, the health and all that stuff like that before that. He didn't have the 60 homer year was like 2 or 3 years.
I just like to say
trade.
that Derek Jeter's first order of business was giving the best player in baseball back to the Yankees. Like
He
what-
was not the best player ever.
He sure was when he first came to New York. He
Nah.
was the NL MVP.
Nah.
NL MVP, home run derby champion, all-star, 50 home runs the year before, most home runs in baseball the year before.
And all of a sudden, he can't even play the outfield anymore.
Well, that's
in
his
2
fault.
years, I mean, come on.
Yeah, the Yankees ruined him.
But they had
The Yankees ruined the best player in baseball.
with the doctors. No, with the doctors and all this stuff going on here, like they've had to know that the writing was on the wall. That's probably why they did that. So it's not. I'm sure this is not like any kind of news or big deal. You know, they're going out. Basically, the terms of the contract was we had to take on all the money, so that's why it wasn't like a freebie slam dunk.
Yeah, but they just paid Garrett Cole that much money, so they're not. It's not like they were. Oh no, we have to take on a $300 million contract. They were happy to pay a guy that hits 52 home runs a year, $300 million. They're happy to do that. That's the Steinbrenners we're talking about. We're not talking about the Marlins. Literally, we're not talking about the Marlins. The Marlins ownership is historic about giving up good players.
No,
they
but
do it all
Yankees,
the time.
The Yankees, their overall payroll, which was legendarily
Was
at
third in
number
the league
one
last
all the
year.
time.
Third in the
yeah,
league.
between third and seventh, they shift. They're not always number one anymore. They're not trying to out dollar anybody anymore.
Yeah,
They're trying to stay under the
that's gonna
luxury
change
tax.
fast.
They want to.
You see the Yankees not win a championship in the next 5 to 10, that'll change.
Well, yeah, I mean 5 to 10, but
I think 5
mean,
years. I think you can say that on the lower end. If they don't make the World Series in the next 3, they'll start paying people.
But it seems like this is like a "what have you done for me lately" kind of thing because it's like
That's what sports are.
Yeah, but
All
just
sports are like that.
like 27 championships. Nobody's got 27 championships. Like the fact that everybody has
Montreal
to take
does.
all this time.
Montreal does.
They have 23.
All right.
So it's like,
But they
all
haven't
the-
won since '93. So
But everybody, like they're taking all this time to catch up and all that. But the Yankees, they still got them. Like there's not milk. They don't expire. You know what I mean? It's just they're always there. So that's it. They don't.
Yankees won championships while the milk guy, the guy that delivered grandma's milk, was playing second base. That's when they started winning championships. All right.
They're still there.
You know what I'm
though.
saying? You know what I'm saying?
They're still
so
there.
they don't count.
All right. But the Red Sox have been around just as long as the Yankees, actually a little longer than the Yankees,
I'm
and it's 7 to 27. So that's just the way it
And-
goes, man.
and
That's where
9.
all this hatred's coming from. By the way,
04, 07,
It's just
13,
so-
8, 4 in this millennium.
so
How
bad.
many of the Yankees won in this millennium?
I don't know, man. I
How
don't
many have
think
they won in the last decade?
I don't think I could continue this conversation because now I'm like afraid of my.
None.
Now I'm afraid of my safety. I'm like I don't know how I want to leave this studio
It's a
after
big
this
fat
today.
0.
Damn. Jeez, the hatred. bro.
Hey, baseball's coming,
Amazing.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
we'll
totally.
have a
We
full
got
baseball show. We're
season
excited.
coming
You
up.
can tell we're excited for baseball.
So we're gonna move on. We're gonna talk a little bit of NHL while we have some time left. So right now, do you have any thoughts overall? Could we just talk about how the Toronto Maple Leafs they have 38
Crushing it.
points and like nobody else?
Toronto's just crushing
Yeah,
teams right now.
yeah. So I think it's amazing. A lot of people are saying that it was like the weakest division. I'm gonna say that it's not.
No, it's definitely still the weakest division. No. We didn't say the North Division was the weakest
No, but a
division.
lot of people like social media and things like that. They're saying that. the
No, I
North
think it's
division's
most
not
top
that
heavy.
great. Yeah.
I think recently, I mean, every team in every league goes on streaks, right? So you look at how that division started. It didn't start out very good. The Flames had their issues. Excuse me. Vancouver had their issues. Ottawa had their issues.
They still do.
Ottawa's
Those
turned
are the
around.
bottom 3 teams.
But you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
everyone's starting to figure it out, right? Everyone's starting to turn it on. But Toronto's figured it out a lot quicker than everyone else has. And everyone was criticizing William Nylander early on in this season. And he's really turned it up the last couple of games. I think he's got, like 7 goals in the last 3 games or something like that?
Well, I'd say it's about time for that franchise because I mean, with
Well,
all
no,
the
I don't want to see them win.
with all the stud-started talent that they have, they might as well be as good as they are right now.
The only thing I would like to see if Toronto wins is because Jumbo gets his cup. That's the only thing.
So we're looking at one shocker factor in the Central Division.
Panthers. What did I say?
The Panthers, yeah. So the Panthers, I don't know. I feel like I've been warmed up to them as far as being successful this season with the way they're built and finally getting it together and things like that. But the Chicago Blackhawks right now are currently fourth, and they're holding the last playoff spot in that division with 28 points.
That's
and the fifth, yeah. But the who's going to catch them?
Dallas.
Dallas
has significantly less games played. They're starting to put it together. I think Dallas catches them quickly. Chicago, don't get me wrong, Chicago is way ahead of schedule in terms of where they should be, right? Chicago, Patrick Kane leading the way, probably the best American hockey player of all time. And there's probably no question. Just scored his 400th career goal the other night. They have great pieces, right? Him, when Taves comes back healthy, hopefully. DeBrincat. You have a lot of great talent in that organization. But I don't think they're quite there yet. I think that they're another year or so out from making a move. I think that Dallas finds a way to put it back together. They were in the Cup Finals last year. They'll find a way to put it back together, finish the season strong, get into the playoffs. Remember, they started out with a break because of COVID. They didn't play right away. And then they had another problem later. And then they've had to deal with the other teams in that division that have had COVID problems. So they've played significantly less games. I think that Dallas finds a way to get in there and take that spot from Chicago. But just real quick on the Panthers, I mentioned this on our preview show before the season started that I like the Panthers to put this thing together. And it's really been fun to watch their young talent is what's carrying them. Their captain, Sasha Barkov, Huberto's been putting it together, but it's been Frank Vetrano, it's been Mackenzie Weegar, it's been some of these young names, right, that have been really carrying the way for these guys, and it's been really fun to watch them. Owen Tippett's been cracking the lineup and contributing when he's been in. It's just been fun to watch that team kind of put it together, and they have a strong. It just stinks because they are loud fans, but the fans in Florida, in South Florida, on the East Coast, aren't really there because of the location of the stadium is the unfortunate part. But they're very vocal on social media, the diehards, quote unquote, for the Panthers, and I hope they can find a way to put this thing together and continue to roll because a Tampa, Florida, that Alligator Alley rivalry would be fun. It'd be a lot of fun to watch.
Let's face it, we've talked about it in the show in the past, and everybody knows that winning is what cures everything. Like even if the arena is hard to get to, when you win, especially when you get into the playoffs and the finals and things like that, people tend to show up. They find a way to show up, and that's what'll build them up. And if they're able to, let's say like win a Stanley Cup and then go on and have sustained success, then they'll be able to build a fan base. It happens everywhere. One thing I want to say though is the Chicago Blackhawks. They are firmly in that spot right now. So we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, Nashville, and Detroit, who seem to all have like just dysfunctional issues up and down their lineups, and nowhere.
Yeah, Detroit's Detroit. We know
winning consistency. Dallas, I guess maybe if they could put it together, but I mean in the early going, it looks like the Blackhawks, if they continue on and they have like that one goaltender, was it Lackalin or something?
Yeah.
The rookie. So it's
Lekanen.
Yeah, so it's possible that they can hold on to that spot, and that would be, I think, the shocker of if you look at all the teams right now and where they are playoff positioning.
Who's in the third spot?
The Panthers.
Who's in the second spot?
Hurricanes.
Hurricanes have been really good too.
Yeah, so I think that would be that's actually like that's the one like eye popping. Wow, they're actually in playoff position right now.
Yeah, I think
Chicago Blackhawks.
You're 100% right. I just think that the longevity of the season. I mean, we're damn near at the end of the season. I think we have 2 months left of the season.
Yeah.
For a lot of these teams, that's not a. We're about halfway through actually.
Well,
for a lot of the teams.
There's a 56 game schedule. Right now, the Canucks are leading with 26.
Yeah, so we're almost halfway through the season.
Yeah.
I think Chicago. If at the halfway point, Chicago's definitely the surprise. I think one of the other surprises is Ottawa. Like I said in our preview show, I think Ottawa's only 4 points or 5 points out of a playoff spot. I think they just dropped a couple to Montreal, but they've been putting big numbers up against Calgary. They put big number. They just got to find a way to beat the bigger and better teams. I think the Jets are a big surprise in that division as well. I don't think either of us picked them to make the playoffs. That North division's turned out to be one of the more competitive divisions in the league, and I think we said that they would be right after the what did we say, the East division with Boston and New York, all the New York teams, Philly, Pittsburgh. I mean, that division's just stacked. Every team in that division's playing good hockey, minus the Sabres. And the Sabres are a whole dumpster fire. We can do a whole episode on that. But we'll have a trade. Well, I think we have a trade deadline preview show coming up here soon.
Yep.
That we'll have to do. But, yeah, I think you're 100% right. Chicago has been a big surprise. The young talent, especially, but Patrick Kane leading the way. Alex DeBrincat has a big role to play there as well. But then just touching back on Florida real quick, it's Joel Quenneville. I mean, Joel Quenneville's the best coach probably ever, one of, if that.
And we
he's
have
really
to
leading the way.
Well, we have a little bit of time left. We have to mention the bounce back that the New York Islanders are doing right now.
Yeah.
As much as I don't want to, but we have to talk about it because right now they've shored up their goaltending because Varlamov who's always been a stud when he's in and out in the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have Sorokin, who has seemed to have gotten very comfortable very quickly in the NHL, and now they have that dual tandem that has led to their success the past 3 or 4 years. Now they have that solid duel of goaltending, and now the New York Islanders are playing like the New York Islanders that we thought they would always be in the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Now they are currently in the second seed in the most powerful division widely is the East Division, and the Capitals are number one in that division, and the Islanders are 2 points behind them. So right now it looks the Islanders are making that big push, and they at one point they were at the same point of where the Rangers were, and we were talking about who's the bigger disappointment, blah blah blah, and now we're to the point where the Islanders are heading to the top spot.
Yeah. I don't think the Islanders. I mean, Matt Barzal's playing an MVP-like season, which everyone expected him to, and I think you're right. I think that 1-2 punch on the back end for the Islanders has been a big help for them, especially the defensive kind of game that Barry Trotz teaches that team and that they've characteristically run since he's been there. That being said, the longevity of that is going to be what's in question. How long can Sorokin and Varlamov pull off this 1-2 punch? Generally, goalies in the NHL like a 1 and a 2. These guys have really been even. It's been 1A and 1B. And it kind of worked for the Islanders last year with Greiss and Varlamov, right?
Yep.
And then we saw what happened in the playoffs. One of them starts to.
I feel like they've been doing this for like 3 years now, because even before that it was Robin Lerner and Greiss. So
Right.
they were like kind of one of the pioneers when it's come to the 1A 1B goaltending punch. And now in this season, they were doing it before it was cool, and now in this season with the condensed schedule, like it's all the more important to have the 1A and the 1B goaltending to sustain the longevity of the season. Because there's some of the goaltenders that are riding it out. Like you have a Vasilevsky in the Tampa Bay, you have Hellebuck, and but like in this type of season, and then you have the needing to win the 16 games in the Stanley Cup Finals, the Stanley Cup playoffs. How are these goaltenders going to hold up? Are they really going to be sustained? Like, if they're going to be able to, run at this? Like,
well, I think that was the
80%
one
clip
problem
the whole
that Vasilevsky had a few years ago. He plays like 70 games in a season, in a regular schedule, and I think he did that. He showed that last year he can carry the team. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but in this condensed, like in this particular season itself, is it going to be
especially
beneficial?
that Central Division?
Yeah, is it going to be beneficial down the road? Like that remains to be seen. But at this point, it's much better to have the 1A and the 1B goaltenders.
Sure.
And that, like the Islanders have perfected it for years before, even now. And like right now, I mean, they just like. They have the offense working, they have the defense working. Like this is the Islanders team that we all expected in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another big surprise for me is Minnesota. The Wild have really started to play really good hockey over the last week or so, and they're starting to put it together. I know we've said that division's a little weaker and it's very top-heavy, but they've been able to put it together. But I think when we jump back over to the East Division, I think that division's played out pretty much how we thought it would. Minus the Rangers, I think everyone's a little disappointed with how that season's been going. I think they can be a
Can't
little
say
bit
I'm
better.
too
Yeah, it's
surprised.
a young team, but there was expectations coming into the year. You had the number one overall pick or number one overall pick. You had Panarin. You had two great goaltenders, especially. But then the problem's going to be now you have that expansion draft looming. We'll get to that later on in some future shows. But
Yeah, but you look at who's on top of the Rangers right now: Capitals, Islanders,
right, that's
Bruins,
what I'm saying. We expected the division's going
Flyers,
about where we
and
expected.
Penguins. Yeah, I mean, there's no real surprise there. There's no real shock. I mean,
Right.
I was a fan. I was wishful thinking, giving them the last playoff spot.
I gave
It's
them a
not
spot too, and I
exactly-
think they could still climb back in. I
Yeah.
think Philly's struggling. Pittsburgh, with Crosby out, has been trying to figure it out. I think Malkin steps up more
Was
when
the
Crosby's
advantage
not
at
playing.
having only 4 points at this
Well,
point?
that's a
2 goals and
problem,
2 assists. Not
That's
exactly
a bit of a
something
problem,
we
right?
predicted.
Coming
Yeah.
off a 48-goal season or whatever he had last year.
Yeah.
So that's a problem,
You know,
right?
this-
Shesterkin and Georgiev haven't quite been up to snuff the way they were last year. So I think that you have some problems on the back end with Brendan Smith, who I've mentioned before. Jack Johnson really hasn't met expectations. So I think, but the young guys that have really stepped in for the Rangers is a real bright spot.
Yeah.
And they signed Braden Smith to a contract, or Braden Schneider to a contract today. So that's a big deal for the Rangers and a good addition for them on the back end too as well.
Yeah, bright future ahead in all of New York hockey. So that is our show for this week. Thank you very much, Harris Berger, for attending this week.
So,
All right, we'll be back next week. Thank you very much. LDM Radio Sports Talk.